Good morning. Today we've got two stories. They've both cropped up for me before. I'm going to say quite a bit about the first story and little, almost nothing, about the second one. And what I'm going to say is very different to what I said at an evening service in August 2019. And that's not because I've changed my mind about what I said then, but because there are many different ways you can read it. And I've just chosen a different emphasis this time. If anyone's really interested, I can send you both texts and leave it to you to work out which is better. Either way, context is important. Jesus is here in Gentile territory. He just had the feeding of the 5,000, where he'd initially gone looking for some downtime. Since then, there'd been a confrontation with the Pharisees about what is clean and what is unclean. So it's another of those times when he wants to get away from the crowd. I keep coming back to this truth that I want to share with you. Jesus is fully human and fully God. He needs downtime. He needs to process this thinking. He needs to learn. Maybe this was the place for it. Were the disciples with him? Who knows? The parallel passage in Matthew has them, but they're not here in Mark. Today, unlike the last time I preached on this passage, I'm assuming they weren't here, and you'll see why in a minute. So Jesus arrives at this house, but even here he can't rest because a woman appears. In the culture of the time, she was the wrong gender, the wrong religion, the wrong nationality, and furthermore, the mother of a child who was, as she said, possessed by a demon. If anyone met the Pharisees' definition of unclean, she did. She had no right to expect a positive response from Jesus, the rabbi. She didn't get one either. Try, if you can, to put yourself in her place and hear Jesus say this to you. First, let the children eat all they want, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. The word used describes a house dog or a puppy, perhaps not exactly like this one, but not a savage scavenger. Even so, perhaps it was just a test, something to bring the woman's faith into the open. Perhaps. If it was, the woman passed with flying colours. Having a crowd of disciples there gives you an easy way out. Jesus maybe said it in their direction, asking them, provoking them to think about whether Jesus had come for everyone or just for the Jews. Tone of voice, body language, and the direction Jesus was looking could disarm this comment completely. But what if it was just Jesus and the woman? What then? What if this woman is left thinking, he just called me a dog? What then? How would you feel? We're all foreigners like her. Is that what Jesus thinks of us? Jesus I grew up with was perfect. Technically human, maybe, but not someone who would laugh, be hungry, get dirty, sweaty, be angry, get tired. Not someone who would ever say the wrong thing. But here, Jesus looks down at the pleading woman, maybe turns away, ignores her suffering, dismisses her as one of the dogs. The thing that's bothered me about this reading for a long time is the racism that we might see in what Jesus said. It's dangerous, very dangerous. It's impossible, really, to project our 21st century Western values onto a different time and place and culture. But people do. They do it all the time. We can't divorce ourselves from our culture. And it's such an obvious question to us that I do want to address it, despite the danger. Was Jesus racist, even for a moment? I can't live with that. I'm sure you can't either. Jesus was surely shaped by his culture, just as we are, because that's an essential part of being fully human. We grow up in a culture. And the thing is that we humans don't always know how those things have shaped us. It's only when our preconceived notions, our prejudices, are challenged that we can respond. So Jesus, fully human, was shaped by his time and place, shaped as we all are by the conscious and unconscious biases, prejudices, and entitlements of his culture. Learning and growing was as important for him as it is for us. He's a real person, and how he responded to this situation reveals who he is. When he was challenged by this woman, this foreigner, this unclean person, he recognized and met her need. Jesus, God incarnate, is the Holy Son, the one who was born King. I'm sure he was fully aware that his mission was for all people. He was a student of what we call the Old Testament. And the Old Testament is clear that God's mission was for all people. But Jesus still had to learn what form this part of his mission would take. When would it start? She wasn't the first Gentile that he'd encountered who needed him. Was it now time for him to extend his ministry? He'd been busy enough, too busy perhaps, in Israel. And now this woman is telling him, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Jesus, she is saying, we are part of your mission. You were called to us too, to women as well as men, to foreigners as well as to Jews, to all of us who carry the burden of a sick child, to us all. We need you now. So do we. And here's where Jesus, the fully human, fully God Jesus, does something he doesn't do anywhere else in all the Gospels. He allows this woman to change his perspective. You can see that the picture I showed before, where Jesus turns his back, is actually part of a bigger picture. And in the bottom half of the frame, Jesus now turns to face this woman. He allows this woman to change his perspective. Jesus won countless arguments with Pharisees, scribes, scholars, and skeptics. Here he recognizes that this woman is right, that this time it's time to extend his mission to Gentiles too, which is just as well for us, wouldn't you say? I'm reminded of her response. Most times we have Holy Communion. We are not worthy so much as gather up the crumbs under your table, but you are the same, Lord. The woman's child is restored. Jesus goes on a little tour of Gentile territory, replicating what he'd done in Israel. Jesus does the most difficult thing. He listens, he hears, he responds, and I think he changes course. Hebrews 4 records that Jesus was tempted as we are, but without sin. And it's in this action that Jesus' sinlessness shines. Learning something new, he immediately puts it into action. He is no racist. He is not reluctant to abandon his preconceived notions. Called to account by God, he responds immediately. On his way, he comes across a deaf and mute man. And he says to him, Ephphatha, which means be opened. Lord, the day the gospel went to the dogs was the day it came to us. We are some of the dogs who have received the good news of the gospel. When Jesus opened himself up to mission to the whole world, he opened his church to the world. So now, let us here at All Hallows open our ears to hear your voice, open our mouths to tell of your love for all people, and open our lives in your service. Amen.